that the electrification of society directly correlated with the increase of chronic disease. Now, that happened across the 20th century, mostly in the 40s, and then 99% of society was electrified by the 60s.
Chronic disease, was there any like specification of like which disease was the most prevalent out of them?
Heart disease. I sent you a picture of like the one graph he had. I'm going to pull it up on my phone. But it's basically, again, this is correlation, not causation.
I can text it to Steve. He could show it on the screen.
Yeah, it's like rate of rural heart disease in 1940, which was when only the cool states had electricity. So,
okay, this thing? I should send it?
Yeah.
All right, Steve, I'm going to email this to you right now.
And basically, Arthur Furstenberg just talks about that. And he talks about some crazy stuff that telecom cables, when they were introduced in the late 1800s, all of a sudden, the flu went from being something that happened like every 5 to 8 years, now happened every single year. And it used to be more tracked to...
The flu?
The flu used to only be a phenomenon, apparently, that occurred like... every few years, like really badly, and it correlated with the solar cycle. So there's an 11-year solar cycle, and we're actually in a peak year right now. So if you're wondering why a bunch of crazy stuff is happening, you can say the solar cycle has somewhat of impact because there's a solar maximum, and that means the most amount of sunspots are happening, the most amount of geomagnetic storms, which means the most amount of like magnetic variables and disturbances, and that's been studied and looked at and having.
It's called a solar cycle?
Yeah, 11-year, and we're in a
solar maximum. Can you look that up? I need to read about this. How have I not had anyone tell me about this?
July 2025 is the peak. So
July 2025 is the peak of the solar cycle, meaning there's more electricity?
You can read it.
Okay, the solar cycle, which is approximately 11 years long, is the periodic change in the sun's activity measured by variations in the number of sunspots on the surface. Okay, the cycle is driven by the sun's magnetic field, which reverses direction every 11 years, lending to fluctuations in solar radiation, ejections from solar material, and the occurrence of solar flares and coronal loops. The 11-year period is influenced by the differential rotation speed between the sun's poles and equator, causing the magnetic field to stretch and eventually reverse. So the magnetic field of the sun reverses every 11 years? Is that what this is saying?
Yeah. And that's having an impact on the magnetic environment on the Earth. And there's studies that look at, psychiatric patients and overall like mental health of people that are very sensitive. And when there's increased solar activity and magnetic disturbances, that can be felt. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, but there's more variation. And this is all what I'm getting at here.
Keep scrolling down, Steve. Sorry, keep going.
Is that we are electromagnetic beings. The only reason there's life on this planet, Danny, is because we have a magnetic field that protects us from a lot of the ionizing radiation from the sun. And we have a magnetic field in the Earth because the Earth has a molten iron core, which is moving charges. Yeah. And that moving charge is creating a powerful magnetic field that's protecting us. And that magnetic field is driving our biology. It actually influences our circadian rhythm. Sure. And that's why potentially these weak magnetic fields from power lines and other products are harmful.
Look at that NASA link.
Because we are, it's called electromagnetic interference in electrical engineering. When we have interference or noise on the line, that's disrupting the real input signal. And the real input signal we need is the Earth's magnetic field, the Schumann's resonance, which is a natural resonance phenomenon in the Earth, and the solar spectrum.
The sun has a magnetic pole flip every 11 years. That'd be like North and the South poles swapping places every decade. And the sun transitions from being calm to... Holy shit, dude.
If that happened on Earth, we would not exist.
Exactly. It would wipe out humanity.
That's also happening slowly. Magnetic pole reversal is definitely happening.
The North Pole is moving, and we just talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's like a couple feet per year, right? Yeah. It was like 12 feet per year. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, it was like a few feet. I don't remember.
A few feet per year.
And it's increasing. And the overall strength of the magnetic field is decreasing. So we're definitely in the early stages probably of a magnetic pole reversal. But these things take thousands of years to play out. So this is what we should be studying more, not like going to Mars, in my opinion. But we are learning a lot about the magnetic or electromagnetic environment by looking in space. So I will say that. Mm-hmm. But that's what I'm trying to get at here is we are designed for this electromagnetic environment that goes on into the Earth. So
yes.
I usually
evolved here.
I usually start podcasts with telling people that, but we're doing the opposite here because I want people to know that we are electromagnetic beings. And the Schumann's resonance, for example, is a phenomenon where lightning strikes occur and there's an electromagnetic resonance in the cavity in the atmosphere, and the Earth's naturally resonating at like 7 to 8 hertz in its first harmonic. That's the same frequency as our alpha brainwave. And that's not a coincidence that occurs. And then when we have these low frequency fields from technology, it of course it's going to have a potential effect on our mental states. Yeah. And that's something that again is very esoteric for mainstream science and medicine, but it's a truth. And the overall acknowledgement that we just need to study more phenomenons on the electromagnetic environment. And the other point I want to make here is that this is all very localized. So if I were to give a recommendation for health, it's not only, getting outdoors is beneficial and getting connected to your environment is beneficial because we are designed to take all the input signals from our local environments. But that local environment is different depending where you are. So what you're doing in Florida and what I'm doing in Wyoming is different. Like, and different modalities and foods and things will affect us differently because the electromagnetic environment is different. There's a different magnetic field coming out of the earth at different directional vectors. And that's where all this gets really complicated, because there are things such as resonance with certain molecules in our body that are interacting with various fields, such as the electromagnetic field of the earth. And depending on your location, it's going to have a different effect. So if we do research this stuff, there's just so many confounding independent variables to consider. And I hope someone has the foresight to think about all of that. But that's also why where you live and embracing the local environment and season is very important, because we're cyclical creatures, and everything that goes on, even the magnetic field of the earth has a rhythm, our circadian rhythms, the seasonality. I'm very big on all of that stuff, and it's kind of nuanced. So even the mainstream health influencers, like, you know, they live on a beach somewhere in the tropics, you really shouldn't always follow their advice if you live in the Northeast and it's January.
Right. Okay, so this says the pole has been moving at a rate of 45 kilometers per year, northwest.
You said feet, you're off by a little bit.
So what's 45 kilometers to feet?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it,
45,
Steve,
that's like 30 miles.
Oh, shit. 45 kilometers is like 30 miles? That's crazy if that's real.
Is it that much? Wow.
Yeah, almost exactly.
27 miles per year? Oh, my God.
That's what we should be studying. Like, I think
somebody has to be studying that.
Not enough. Not that I've
Maybe
seen.
They just don't want to let the public know. Because if you're in charge and you're figuring out that this Earth's about to flip, do a pole flip, are you going to tell the public?
It's hard.
That would be the equivalent of telling them there's an alien invasion.
Do you think?
I think so, yeah.
In 222 years, the pole will be flipped completely.